What is going on, guys? Welcome back to Pat Outdoors. Today I'm going to be hopping back on the E325 project. Thank you again, Jackson Kreider, for sending me a new Razor electric scooter to modify. On the last video, I unboxed this thing and we took it out for that initial test ride just to get a baseline number on what the top speed is with a 175-pound adult. And I was able to get about 12.5 miles an hour with the factory 24-volt drivetrain. And then I added a additional 8.4 volt RC battery and wired it in line just to increase the voltage. And I was able to get 15.1 miles an hour out of it. But that is just simply nowhere close to the speed that I want. And I also noticed some minor issues that I just wanted to address with the setup, like the factory drum brake. I think every scooter nowadays should have at least a disc brake setup. So we are going to be changing that out. So I've decided that I'm going to convert this thing to a 52 volt hub motor setup. And I've already got all of the parts here, including the battery that I'm going to borrow from my other MX650. I want this thing to go over 30 miles an hour. So let's get started tearing this thing down. So we now got the E325 stripped down to the frame. Now I'm just going to remove this stupid on-off switch of the throttle and any remaining decals on the frame and on the platform. And then we'll start going over all the parts that we're going to be using for the hub conversion. Just want to go over some of the parts that we're using for this project, starting with the hub motor. This is going to have a disc brake mount on it, so I should be able to mount a 160 millimeter disc brake rotor. This is a 500 watt 48 volt hub motor that was designed for an M4 Pro scooter. Here's a close-up of the part number. This should be twice as powerful as the original motor that came with this E300 or E325 scooter, but not only that, I'm also pairing it with a 2000 watt controller by Kunray. All these electronics, the throttle, the key, the speed controller, all this actually came with my 48 volt Kunray setup that was on my blue bike prior to me switching it to 72 volt with a Kelly controller. So is this gonna work together? I actually have no idea. This is my first time working with a hub motor, but looking at the wiring, it just looks like a standard 3-phase wires and 5 Hall sensor wires. So it looks pretty standard as a brushless motor. So we'll find out. Really hoping that it does, because I really want to make this work. Worst case scenario, I'll find a controller that will work with that. And then the battery we're using is currently still in the black MX650. This is a 52 volt, 20 amp hour with a 50 amp continuous discharge BMS, which should be plenty of power for this controller. Is this going to burn out this motor? I have no idea. I just want to go over 30 miles an hour with it for a little while. Worst case scenario, if this scooter breaks down in a couple weeks, I'm going to buy myself like a Nami or a Cabo Wolf King GT or something. This is supposed to be a little over 11 inches long, which should in theory fit within this bar. though it is almost 3 inches thick. So I'm planning on lowering those bars some with these 5mm shaft couplers. So hopefully I'm able to get it dropped down about 1/2 inch and have it be enough to fit the battery in there. Otherwise, I'll just have somebody weld some extensions and then we'll fit a tray under it and whatnot to protect it. The width of the motor shaft is pretty narrow on this hub motor though. It's actually the same exact width as the rear portion of this frame. So I may have to pinch that a little bit just to get the nuts on the outside to properly secure this in place. I may just have to trim down these axle spacers and put them in here to get it to properly center it in the frame, but we'll find out. And I'm also going to be adding a handlebar mount flashlight just to act as a headlight for night riding. It's just a simple one that I always had on my mountain bike handlebars. And then I just got some skateboard grip tape to reapply to the whole platform. I think it's going to look a lot cleaner with the whole thing satin black. If you are interested in checking out any of the items that we're using for this project, I will have everything linked in the description below. Let's go put this rear wheel on. Here's how we're looking so far. The size difference between the front and rear tire is actually not that noticeable, even though it's supposed to be 1 inch overall diameter difference. Looks pretty natural. It even works with the kickstand height, so I don't even have to modify that. What I ended up doing was beating the tabs on the rear inward from both sides and then bending them back straight and then bolting the wheel on just so there's enough threads on each side to properly secure it. Now I gotta fabricate some spacers to fill in this gap and then put the locking washers on the outside to keep the axle from turning when I'm throttling. But so far it looks like it's gonna work out with no clearance issues. Here's how the spacers ended up looking like up close. And then the lock tabs on the bottom side is gonna keep the axle from rotating. The center of the tire is perfectly center with this hole on the frame. So we are looking good so far. Now I just gotta figure out how to fit the controller in place since I'm planning on having the battery take up this whole space. The only place I can think of fitting it is gonna be this general area. And this Kunray controller is pretty huge. I'm not a big fan of having it protrude that much. So I may switch over to this Vever 1800 watt controller, which is about an inch or so shorter in length, which is gonna stay a little bit more tucked in the frame. So this has a similar output. It's 1800 watts, and it's also rated for the same 33 amp continuous amp output as this Kunray, so there's really no power difference. This is gonna be plenty combined with the battery in this motor. I'm gonna work on mounting this over here now, and then we're gonna install the throttle and see if everything works out. So I got all the cables and wiring fully routed and everything is connected for the controller, but I'm a freaking idiot because I completely forgot that I was supposed to install the brake rotor. Before I do all this, now I'm gonna have to redo it again because you have to slip it through all the hub wiring, mount it on, then put the wheel on, and then connect all your wires. So we're just gonna have to redo this again at some point later. So I just have it temporarily tied in place so we can test out if this is actually gonna work. Before I take out the battery out of this bike, let's just confirm that the voltage is over 52. It is 58.8 volts. So this thing is fully charged, which should give this thing a decent amount of juice. Hopefully it can spin a tire. Seems to be wide enough back here, not up front. I'm gonna experiment with this a little bit later, see if I can tuck it from the bottom side. Let's see if anything bad happens. So far so good. Let's turn the key on. Seems to be working fine. I don't have a brake on it yet, so I'm gonna put it up against a wall and test the load on it. I got it posted up against my toolbox. Let's see if it'll take any load. Everybody takes load just fine. That got real hot. Forgot I don't have a cover on it. Got a bunch of burnt rubber on my foot. I guess the answer is yes. You could run these type of controllers with these hub motors. Now this has me curious if I should run my Kunray controller as well and another hub motor up front. Let me know what you think about that idea. Please comment below if you have any suggestions. All right guys, well unfortunately that is all I have time for today, but I'm really happy to see that the setup that I planned for this thing is working out so far. On the next video, I'm gonna wrap up the whole disc brake conversion and figuring out how I'm gonna want the battery mounted, and then work on the aesthetics, get the covers back on, and then we're gonna take this thing out for an actual top speed test. Really hoping that it'll go over 30 miles an hour. I really don't see why it wouldn't. Let me know what you guys think of the setup. If you are interested in checking out any of the items that I use for this project, I will have everything linked in the description below. If you found this video helpful in any way, do me a favor and hit that like button. And if you like this kind of content, want to keep up with this project or any of my other projects, consider subscribing to this channel. But this is going to be it for today. Thank you for watching.